Okay, it is clearly it's Monday and I haven't changed the calendar. So it's Monday, the 34th of November,
20,
No,
the
20,
27th,
no.
20th,
20.
20. Today is the 20th of November, 2023, and
Yeah.
it is we're in Thanksgiving week. And
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a little turkey. And so that's coming up though. And hopefully you guys will all have a wonderful Thanksgiving of some sort, some kind, some way, somehow, someplace.
Yep.
Anyway,
Thank you.
okay, we are about to begin the book of Joshua, but I want to touch on this a little bit. An event that transpired in the New Testament, and I saw something like that play out today. We were talking last week about my friend whose wife had passed, and the funeral was today, the internment of her remains. He had her cremated, and and so her remains were interned today, and they had a small service there at the graveside in a little community cemetery out in the middle of nowhere, and it was really a beautiful spot. It was very serene, very beautiful, the whole nine yards. And so we went out there, and there were a number of us out there, and a lot of concerned people. And my friend, her husband, who remains, he broke down weeping. And which is to be expected. That's his wife, a wife of 56 years, and his constant companion, his love and his foil, his muse and his enemy at sometimes, I mean, that's every relationship, right? Anyway, I was thinking about that today, and a lot of people upset at the passing of a person when a person passes, and when we go to the funeral and we're saddened, it's not necessarily that we are upset that this person has passed per se, because they're no longer here. They're no longer suffering. They're no longer subject to the world as it is. The grief is more self-directed. What we are going to miss. His statement was, "I can't believe she's gone. I can't believe she's gone. I don't know how to make sense of this." Similarly, the thinking, what am I going to do now? How am I going to get through this? Everything's changed. And it reminded me of the scripture where Lazarus, Jesus' friend, and the brother of Martha and Mary, he passed away, and Jesus delayed. He stayed away, and he was gone for 4 days, and he finally came back, and Lazarus had been not necessarily embalmed, because that isn't what they did back then, but he had been wrapped up, and they had covered him with the spices and everything else, and laid him in a grave, in a tomb, and rolled a rock in front of it. And so Lazarus was passed away in there, and Jesus shows up, and everybody's crying, and they're crying, and they're upset, and they're mourning. Their brother has passed, their friend has passed, their son has passed, and he's gone, and it provoked Jesus to weep. And they kept saying to him, "If you had been here, none of this would have happened. If you had only been here, he wouldn't have passed away." And Jesus responds to that, shortest version or verse in the Bible: Jesus wept. Okay, now why did Jesus weep? He wasn't weeping because Lazarus was dead. This is God Almighty, and he knows exactly what's transpiring. He knows about what he's about to do. He knows that he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead, and he knows that he stayed away 4 days in order for everybody to understand that Lazarus is in fact dead. He wasn't passed out. He wasn't comatose. He isn't on the other side of the rock there, knocking and pounding on it to let them out. He's not awake or aware. This man is dead. And how do you know if someone is dead? Now, years ago, I had read a book by Raymond L. Moody called Life After Life, where he talks about near-death experiences and things like that, and people, they see lights and loved ones, and they go down a tunnel in the whole nine yards, and how they are pronounced dead, clinically dead. They're not pronounced dead, but they're clinically dead, where the brain isn't working or the heart isn't beating and things like that. And Wow. And so there was a gentleman by the name of Tal Brook who had written a book called After Death, or Death, excuse me, just Death, and where he addressed this. He was a contemporary as well as a friend of Raymond Moody's, and he wrote his book specifically to rebut what Moody had written. And so he says he starts off his book positing what is dead. How do you know that somebody's dead? How can you tell for an absolute fact that somebody is dead? I mean, because this man, Tal Brook, had come out of service to one of the Indian super gurus, a guy named Sai Baba, who was a genuine miracle working super guru. And Tal Brook had said he had seen examples of these yogis who could put themselves into a trance so deeply that it appeared, for all intents and purposes, that they were dead. They were no longer breathing. They couldn't measure any heartbeat. They couldn't measure any brainwave activity, and yet these guys would come out of it. They'd go in and put themselves in these extremely deep trances, and then they would come back out of it. And so, and they could spend days, sometimes up to a week, in these trances. And so, that being the case, Tal Brook says, how do you know that somebody's dead? And he says, the only way you can tell for an absolute fact that somebody's dead is that they go into rigor mortis and then they begin to decay. That's the only way you know for an absolute fact that somebody is dead, that they begin to decay. And so this is why Jesus tarried. This is why it took him 4 days to show up, because in 4 days, Lazarus, his friend, had already gone through rigor mortis and had begun to decay. And everybody's talking about that. He says, roll the stone away. And they're like, what are you talking about? This guy's going to stink. This is the Middle East. He's in this cave. He's wrapped up. This isn't going to be pretty. And Jesus says, roll the stone away. Now, why did Jesus weep? He didn't weep because Lazarus was dead. Like I said, he knew that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He was weeping because all of those people there thought Lazarus lost. They didn't understand that when a person passes away, that they go either in and they sleep and wait for the judgment, or they're present with the Lord. Or if they have completely rejected God, then they go the other way. And so, that being the case, glad you made it back, Terry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Bianca was texting me, and
that's all right. And I'm glad you got back here. So, we mourn because we've lost somebody. Jesus wept because they didn't understand that Lazarus wasn't lost to God, that he may have been missed by them, but his real state was he was beloved by God, and God was about to raise him from the dead. So that's something to consider. Believers have that faith and have that comfort. No, that person isn't gone. I'll see that person again. I will definitely see that person again, when I pass as well, or at the resurrection, or whatever. And so we have that comfort, and we don't have to be upset by the passing of friends and family. We know that we will miss them, and we will miss their presence in our lives. And for that we'll mourn. But we're not mourning for their loss, because they're in a far better place. And so that's just something to consider. Okay. And if you're not a believer, then you have no comfort in that regard. There's nothing there to comfort you. In this case, I don't know that either my friend or his wife are believers. And so, of course, they're going to feel the sting of loss. Whereas for those of us who have received salvation through the finished work of Jesus, we know that we are saved, that we are saved, we are redeemed. And so we have that blessed assurance. I always like to find a way to use that particular phrase, blessed assurance, not blessed, but blessed. So it sounds more regal, if you will. Okay, anyway, speaking of blessed assurance, Moses has passed away. And the Israelites are there, and they mourned Moses because Moses was an integral part of their lives. He was the guy. He was absolutely the guy. And now he's gone. And Joshua, who was one of only 2 people that went into the promised land as the 12 spies, and came back with a good report. He and a man named Caleb, they came back and they said, this is great. This ground is great for taking. Let's go do this. And the other 10 spies were like, no, we can't go in there. There's giants in there. We're like grasshoppers compared to these people. And so God said, because of your lack of faith, then you're not ready. You're going to wander around the desert for another 40 years out in the wilderness. And none of you people, other than Joshua and Caleb, none of that generation, none of you folks are going to go in to the promised land. That included Moses. So now Moses has passed, and here's here's Joshua. He's the general of the army, and he's the handpicked successor to Moses. And he has been commissioned by the Lord, and he's going to lead the Israelites into the promised land, where God has said they're going to have to take care of the people that are in there, not care for, but get rid of, eliminate, make them go away and get rid of every single one of them. Why? Because of the detestable practices of the people in the promised land. They were sacrificing babies. They were practically killing and eating people. They were worshiping other gods. They were doing strange things in a strange land that God had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all their forebears or ancestors, descendants, excuse me. All right, that's a lot. Anybody questions, comments, thoughts? Did we lose Copper?
Yeah, he went to go get some kibbles.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
Kibble break. Did you have a question, comment?
So was Jesus also weeping with the people, you think?
No, he wasn't weeping because there was no loss. He felt no loss. His friend wasn't dead. He was about to see his friend. All he had to do was call him up. And this is an interesting thing, and thank you for asking about that. This is an interesting thing. Stephen King, of all people, writes about this. And I thought this is one of the most profound insights ever coming from somebody who is questionable when it comes to the moral aspect of things like that. And not to cast aspersions at the man, because I've never met him and I don't know that for certain, but based on what he writes and based on the statements that he makes, it's kind of indicative of somebody who has faith in themselves, if anything. Anyway, he makes this statement that Jesus is in the graveyard and he's calling Lazarus forth, and he says, "Lazarus, come forth." And then Stephen King, he makes the statement I thought was just profound. He says he had to specify Lazarus, because if Jesus had just stood there in the graveyard and said, "Come forth," everybody in the graveyard would have come forth. So
That's funny.
I thought,
Great.
yeah, and I thought that's an
Good
incredible
observation.
insight. Yeah. So
But wasn't he in a cave by himself in the
was.
house?
He was in a tomb, a cave in a dugout tomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so there's that. Okay, so now here we are at the book of Joshua, the first book following Torah. Now it came about after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' servant, saying, "Moses, my servant, is dead. His body has passed away." Dead to God is not dead to us. Dead, when God talks about dead, in most cases, he is talking about lost to him. You know, the statement, "You're dead to me," that kind of thing. That's what he's talking about. Then when a person is dead to God, they are dead to God. They're dead to him. And he doesn't acknowledge them. They don't exist in his mind. They're done. They're finished. They're out of the picture completely. They're not now. God and Jesus refers in several times to people who are sleeping, and how they're going to wake up those who are sleeping, and those who are asleep will rise. Those who are dead in Christ, meaning asleep, passed away, their bodies have perished, but their souls remain. But when God talks about dead, except not in this case with Moses, when he's generally talking about those people who are dead, this is why Jesus says, "Let the dead bury the dead." He's talking about those who are spiritually dead, cut off from God. Let them deal with the other people that are spiritually dead and cut off from God. You know, they don't acknowledge God, and so they're dead to him. Okay, but here we go. I just wanted to add that in there. Moses, my servant, is dead, passed on. Now therefore arise, cross this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, to the sons of Israel. Every place on which the sole of your foot treads, I have given it to you, just as I spoke to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, as far as the great sea, that would be the Mediterranean, toward the setting of the sun, will be your territory. No man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. What a promise. Quite a promise. Everywhere your foot touches, that belongs to you. All the way to the Euphrates River. And where is the Euphrates? Run right through the middle of Iraq, right? Or Iran, right?
Doesn't it touch the river Egypt? The river in Egypt?
The promised land?
Euphrates? The
No,
Euphrates on the other end, is it the river?
no, the Euphrates runs into the Arabian Sea.
No, where does it begin though? Doesn't it begin by the lake of or river
by-
of Egypt?
Up by Turkey.
Turkey, okay.
Yeah, up by Turkey and by the Black Sea and in that area up there. What was Mesopotamia.
Turkey, right? Mesopotamia was Istanbul?
Istanbul, yeah, Turkey and Iran, Iraq, part of Afghanistan, that area there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's the river that's gonna dry up. Okay,
So
sorry.
there's the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. But he's
Tigris and
talking as
Euphrates.
far as the Euphrates, which is the western river of the two. And now I'm wondering, is it the Euphrates that flows down and ends in the Persian Gulf at the top northern end of the
I
Persian?
don't know. That's what I was trying to figure out where.
It might be. Somebody got a
I
map?
forgot. I don't. I only have my phone. I don't have access to anything.
Okay. All right.
Maybe Rach can Google it or something.
We'll look it up. Yeah. Or I'll post a link to it in the comments section of this when this goes online. And yeah. Okay. So there's that. Where am I at? Be strong, verse 6. Be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people possession. He's talking to Joshua. For Joshua, you will give this people, being the Israelites, possession of the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. Okay, now think about this. This is God's command and urging to Joshua, saying, I'm putting you in charge. You're going to lead these people just like Moses led them. You are now going to take his place, and you're going to lead them, all the Israelites, into the promised land. And here is the extent of the land that you guys are going to receive from me. And he's saying to Joshua, now, in order to accommodate this commission, and in order to carry this out and be successful at this, he says, don't depart, don't go to the left, don't go to the right, just stay the course and study the law. Let the law be first and foremost in your mind and in your heart, basically. Be courageous. Take courage in the law. Take courage that what you're doing is true and correct. This is the same commission that Jesus has given to the church, to each of us believers. Don't go to the left, don't go to the right. Just do that which the Lord has commissioned you to do. Stay the straight and narrow. Let the word of the Lord be in your heart and on your mind all the time. Think continually on that. This isn't a should. This isn't a have to. This is what's best for you. This is God telling us this is what's best for us, that if we focus on his word and if we focus on what he's telling us to do, then the result is going to be wonderful for us. That if we don't deviate from the course, we won't get confused. We will be absolutely on the straight and narrow. And I was thinking about that with Adam and Eve. Okay, here's Adam. Adam's singular. He's by himself. He's in the garden. He only has the Lord to talk to in terms of another person like him. well, he's like God in that he was shaped physically to resemble in his likeness and image. And yet here comes Eve, and Eve is a separate person, and yet she's made in the image of Adam. And so she's doing what she feels to be doing, and she's out doing whatever she wants to do. And I'm sure she's exploring the place, and she's getting used to the place and all of this stuff. And in the meantime, Adam, who's been there for a while, is sticking to the work. He's doing what God wants him to do, and he's sticking to the work. And at the same time, he has this other person, and he's responsible for this other person, but this other person has a mind of their own. And so this other person is doing what she wants to do and all of that. And so while she's doing that, as long as she stays by Adam, as long as she stays near Adam, and then she's going to be in contact, in constant contact with the will of God, because this is what Adam is, and this is what Adam does. He does God's will. She goes outside of that, and she starts seeking other things, and suddenly she encounters the serpent. Suddenly she encounters the enemy, and the enemy starts putting ideas into her head that there's incomplete information out there, and things are being kept from her. And that if she just does her own thing, she'll get the answer she wants, and she will get the results that she's seeking. And so what happens is when she goes and seeks other paths and other courses, then what happens is she brings that home to her husband, and her husband wanting to love his wife and to be with his wife, and who's the only other human being, flesh and blood on the planet that's like him physically, then he follows along with that. And so God says, why did you listen to her? You knew what your job was. You knew exactly what your job was. I put her here for you, and now all of a sudden you're following her. Why are you following her? And he says to her, I put you here to follow him, and yet you followed that. So why did you follow that? And then he doesn't even ask the serpent why he did it. He already knows why the serpent did it. But that's the point being, this is exactly what he's saying to Joshua. You have a purpose here. Your one purpose is to take over from where Moses is and to lead my people into the promised land. Don't deviate from that. You'll have the distraction of the world, of all these other cultures that you're going to encounter in the promised land. The Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, everybody. And they are going to be weighing on you and tempting you to take and deviate from the path. And he's saying, don't do it. They don't have anything you need, and they really have nothing that you want. They may have shiny, they may have enticing, they may have exciting, but where is that leading them? I'm telling you to go wipe them out because of what they're doing. And if you're not going to wipe them out, then you're going to end up just like them. And now you're just like Adam and Eve in the garden. You've completely failed at what you were meant to do. So there's that. So in verse 9, I'm sorry, comments, questions, thoughts, ideas, blueprints that you want to discuss for a new percolator? Anything? Nothing?
Later.
The only thing I was thinking was, this doesn't really have to do with what you're saying so much as that we were talking about what God gave and everywhere they stepped. And, this raging argument about who does Israel belong to? Well, it doesn't belong to, it belongs to God. It's God's. And God in Genesis 12 gave it to Abram and his descendants. I thought that should be the end of the argument there, but that's just me.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Except people don't, people other than Abram don't recognize what God has done. And that's a common theme everywhere we go.
I mean, it is a book from antiquity. It has been right about everything, and 28% of it is prophecy, and it's all come true so far, except for the last chapter, which looks like it's coming fast. But you're here nor there. That was my only comment.
Oh,
And you were
cool.
saying everywhere you step.
Yeah, everywhere you step. Yeah.
It's been reduced to the sliver. Well, we know who the tenant of the leaseholder is.
Well, it's been reduced to a sliver for now.
For now, yeah. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, they will inherit that property, and they will occupy that property, and
yes.
Yeah. 9, have I not commanded you? What a statement. What a statement. This is not only a definitive question, but it's an absolute in terms of its impact. Have I not commanded you? Isn't this reality? Isn't this how things are supposed to be? Jesus said that, I go to prepare a place for you so that where I am, you can be also. And he says, if it wasn't that way, I would have told you. And so God's saying the same thing. This is how it's meant to be. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what you are doing. And Joshua, I'm sure his brain is like swelling with all these ideas of what he has to do. And God's saying, just keep it simple. Stay on the straight and narrow. Listen to me. Listen to what I'm telling you. Do what Moses did. It wasn't easy for Moses because everybody has their own ideas. And like my dog, Ginger, they want to go wandering around, you know? And now there's more to that story, though, because when Ginger was on the leash with me, she was safe because I knew where I was going. And while she was on that leash and we were taking a walk, she could run around up to the end of that leash as much as she wanted to, but she always ended up where I took her, although she thought it was her idea. But she got off the leash a couple of times. And while she was being watched by somebody other than me, and both times she ran out into the road and got hit by a car. And first was a car, the second was a truck.
Oh, yuck.
And the second time nearly fatally. And she was never the same after that second accident. But that's us. We take off running after our own stuff because we are listening or being watched by somebody else, and we're not paying attention to God. And we're not seeking what God wants, and we run out into traffic. And this is where the problems start. This is where the trouble starts. And then what happens to us there is it affects us for the rest of our lives. Whereas if we just stay on the end of the leash, we may think it constrains us, but it doesn't. It's actually freedom. It's a great deal of freedom there at the end of that leash because we are completely protected and ensconced with the love of the Lord, and his directions are perfect. So this is what he's saying. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about a thing. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go, and the same is true for all of us individually today. God is with you. I think about the medieval times, or whenever, not necessarily medieval, but even to this day, heads of state, kings or presidents or premiers or whatever, they have this incredible amount of authority over their holdings and their kingdoms or their elected positions, and they are imbued with and endowed with vast authorities and vast power. And so they can say, this is what I want done. And they'll turn to whomever it is they turn to get things done. And they turn and they say, I want this done and I want that done. In fact, I want to reach out to this country over there. So find somebody that can speak for me and speak intelligently for me, and send them to go be my ambassador. And I'll tell them what to say, and they say what I want them to say to this other country. Okay, so our ambassadors don't have the autonomy per se to just make their own rules. They do what the president or the king or the premier or the sheikh or the sultan, whomever, has decided the message is supposed to be. And so they carry out that message nearly verbatim. Okay, now as the ambassador is gone, the king or the power and authority makes sure that that person has all the provisions they need to accomplish the task that they have been commissioned to do. So think about that. God says to you, or let's say the president says to any of you here, I need you to go to Guatemala, and I want you to go talk to the president of Guatemala, and this is what I want you to say to him. Okay? So you say, how am I going to get there? He says, I've got this all taken care of. So somebody comes along and they hand you a plane ticket, or they make arrangements. Maybe there's no ticket. You'll never handle the ticket. They just make arrangements. You get on a plane that's already pre-chosen. You go to Guatemala. You have an itinerary that's built for you. and you go and you carry this message and you say, my president says this and this and this and this and this. Okay. And then the president of Guatemala says, okay, well, hang on. I have a response to that. Hang out here for a while. So now you phone back to Washington. You say, okay, he wants me to stay here so that we can have a dialogue. And the president says, well, I've authorized you to a room and board and food and a way to get around and all the supplies you need to accomplish what I want you to get accomplished, because it's important to the president. Okay. The president has a mission and he wants this mission completed. He has commissioned you to do that mission, and he's going to give you everything you need to carry that mission out successfully. And if you begin to run out of supplies, you contact the embassy, or you call back to Washington. You say, I'm out of toothpaste. I don't have any, I don't have any ballpoint pens to give to the president when I see him. I need a new cape. My cape is worn out. And the president says, get this person a new cape, send them some ball pens or ballpoint pens, and get them whatever it is they need. The very same is true for each of us when it comes to the commissioning that God has given us. He chose you to be his personal representative to those who do not yet believe. And in some cases, to those who do believe, but don't have the faith yet, and they need and require more training, more learning, whatever. And God will give you absolutely everything you need whenever you need it to accomplish what it is he wants you to do, because he wants you to do it. And because nothing comes back to God unfinished. So when he says, let there be light, it wasn't like he had to work at it. Oh, I need a bigger device. Wasn't Edison and his 10,000 light bulbs? 10,000 attempts to make a light bulb that worked and stayed working. God wasn't like that. He just said, let there be light, and there was. And he said, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's exactly what I wanted. And he didn't modify it. He didn't have to, because it was exactly what he wanted it to be. And the same is true for everything else. So why am I saying all this? Because Joshua had been commissioned by God, and God is telling him, don't worry about a thing. If your own experience doesn't show you that I took care of Moses and everything Moses needed and everything all you people needed while Moses was around, then understand the same thing's going to happen to you now. I will provide for you everything you need. There's no need to worry. Don't fret. Don't get upset. Don't get anxious for anything. Just relax. You're going to do what I want you to do, and I'll protect you, and I'll take care of you the whole way away, the whole way as it goes. The same is true for us. Questions, comments, thoughts?
No, that's very, very interesting. Thank you.
Well, I hope it helps. Because we, as human beings, we spend a lot of time worrying because the world is telling us you can't trust God. You can't rely on God. You got to do it yourself. There's other methods and there's other means, and if something occurs that's contrary to God's will in our minds, we say, well, this can't be God's will, but who are we to speak for God? If something occurs, it's because God says, okay, this is part of that journey. This is part of that. Like when you're a kid and you're playing with your toys, okay, Jimbo steps on the pencil and the pencil, whatever. And so, as you're making up the story, but his is vastly, never mind. That's a terrible analogy. And that analogy, forget it. Never mind.
I was wondering, where were you going with the pencil?
It doesn't matter.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, 10. Now, with the words in his ears, still ringing in his ears, God telling him, be courageous, be strong and courageous. Don't tremble. Don't be dismayed. The Lord your God is with you wherever you go. It doesn't say sometimes or I'll be with you on occasion. It says, wherever you go, I'm there. 10. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, pass through the midst of the camp and command the people, saying, prepare provisions for yourselves. For within 3 days you are to cross this Jordan, to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess it. So he's taking charge, right? Okay, 3 days. 3 days from now, we're going to go in. We're going in 3 days. Do whatever you have to do. Make it happen. Now, for I don't know who's been in management or anything like that, but in the military, it's all management. But the military, that management is kind of absolute. As long as it's a lawful order, there's no way to get out of it, unless you're being ordered to do something and you have the ability to delegate that to somebody else. But for the most part, if somebody orders you to do something that is superior to you in rank, then you're required to do that. It's the same thing here. Joshua, the head of the armies of all of Israel, is saying to those under him, he's delegating authority. You have 3 days, and in 3 days we're moving out. We're moving out and we're taking that land. We're crossing the Jordan and we're going. I leave it up to you to figure out how to do it, but get everything you need together so that we can accomplish this. And he's delegated that. So now he's saying that to the elders and whomever else. And of course, they're going to turn to the people under them and say, I need you to do this and this and this and this and this. And as it goes farther down the line, the delegation gets more spread out. But guess what happens in 3 days? They go across the Jordan. Just like in a great example of that is in World War II. In the Battle of the Bulge, many of the Allied and especially the American troops were pinned down in the Ardennes, and because the Germans had swept around them. Was the bulge in the line. I don't know how to. Here's the bulge in the line, and had surrounded the city of Bastogne, where the American troops were stuck and they're completely cut off. And so it's a terrible snowstorm and everything else. And it was Patton that had foreseen this kind of an endeavor that it was possible for the Germans to break through and possibly mount an offensive there. And he'd already prepared for that. So when all the generals in Europe are called together by Eisenhower, and he says, these people are in trouble up here. We have to do something. Patton says, I've already got a contingent for this, and I can be there in 3 days, and or 2 days, I think it was. And Eisenhower's like, what are you talking about? You're just leaving a major campaign, and now you're going to drop everything and wheel north and be up there in 3 days. And he says, my people are outfitted for this. We can do this. So what happens? The commanding general of the army turns to his men and says, we're going up north to liberate Bastogne. You got 3 days to get there. Make it happen. And that's exactly what happened. 3 days later, they liberated Bastogne. Now, the guys that were in Bastogne, to their dying breath, said, we didn't need Patton to liberate us, but he did, and it worked. I'll give you another example, if you will, of the delegation power that's coming through Joshua here. In 1991 or 92, Mike Ditka was the coach of the Chicago Bears. And they had a great run as a football team, and they had won many NFC Central championships. They'd won a Super Bowl. They'd gotten to the NFC Championship several times, and under his command. But it got to the point that he was losing that command, and his players were performing terribly. So he held a press conference at one point and said to the press conference, he says, I don't think my team can win another game. Now think about that. The head coach of the Bears goes on TV and says, I don't think my team can win another game. What did he just tell his team?
You're losers.
Don't win another game. That's what he said, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So guess what? In spite of themselves, they won one more. But for the rest of that season, except for that one isolated win, they didn't win another game. Because that's what their coach told them to do. This is the power of delegation. This is also, think about this, because this is a lesson from our childhood and from growing up. We hear all these lessons that are taught to us by teachers or those in authority, or somebody may say in an offhand comment, oh, that kid will never amount to anything. And this person hears this and internalizes this. It's an order. So what happens? They don't amount to anything because that's what they've been told to do. Which is why we're supposed to mind our P's and Q's, mind what words come out of our mouths, because the power of the tongue, it can raise the dead, allegorically speaking, or it can kill, allegorically speaking. And so we need to be very mindful of the things that we say to each other, especially to those under our authority. and especially them being children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews, we need to be careful that what we say to them is first off scriptural, because this is what God says, don't depart from the left or the right, right? Keep steady and work in the word. Scriptural, and then also that it's positive, it's productive, it's going to produce something. So I'm preaching now. Okay, so 12. I'm sorry. Thoughts, comments, questions, ideas? Copper, are you hearing all this?
The book of Proverbs is full of what comes out of your mouth, full of it.
Full of it. Yeah. Proverbs
Mhm.
is a wonderful book.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very worth studying. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question coming up, the very next verse. I hope you explain that.
Okay. In verse 12.
Correct.
Okay, verse 12. To the Reubenites and to the Gadites and to the half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God gives you rest and will give you this land.
Why the half tribe of Manasseh? Why not the whole tribe?
That's a really good question. And I know the answer to that, but I'm drawing a blank, honestly.
Okay.
The half
Wasn't Manasseh a bad guy?
Manasseh was can I get back to you on that? Is that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
okay? I apologize.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yes. Manasseh was less than stellar, if you will, in their behavior and treatment of not only the other tribes, but their how they dealt with the Lord. And they came under a great deal of disfavor because of it. And we're going to yes, ma'am.
Is Joshua saying to the half tribe of Manasseh, or is God saying to the half tribe of Manasseh?
He's
Joshua.
Joshua is
you.
saying this to them on behalf of the Lord.
All right, so I know what to Google.
So 12 to the Reubenites and to the Gadites and to the half tribe of Manasseh.
Joshua.
Manasseh, and I'll get back to you.
Joshua's.
I'll get back to you on that. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
No.
You want
That's all right.
to hear what Google says, or you want me
Oh,
to
please.
wait?
Yeah, please. Which one are you talking about? You're talking about Manasseh?
The half tribe.
I texted or I Googled why did DuckDuckGo technically. I go to DuckDuckGo search. Why did Joshua say to the half tribe of Manasseh? And it says, who were the half tribe of Manasseh? Then Joshua addressed the Reubenites. Hang on a second. It says on eBible, MSG 12. I don't know what that means. Then Joshua addressed the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. He said, remember what Moses. It goes on to say that, then it says, clarify. Answers. This isn't working.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Yeah. This is meant to be answered later. I'm
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
because it's
I
a
can't-
fairly detailed answer, and I'm prone to going down rabbit trails, but this one will take me probably all night. And,
Okay,
and
scratch that.
my brain's fuzzy anyway, and I don't want to do it a disservice or an injustice. And so, if I'll get back to you, but also post in the comments about the half tribe, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Maybe
you.
there was part of the tribe that followed God and the other part of the tribe didn't. Must be.
There's
But then
part,
I
yeah. Now I'm 14. 14? Is that okay?
13.
yeah, right.
Okay, your wives, your little ones, and your cattle shall remain in the land which Moses gave you beyond the Jordan, but you shall cross before your brothers in battle array. All your valiant warriors shall help them, until the Lord gives your brothers rest, as he gives you, and they also possess the land which the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to your own land and possess that which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise. So in the west. So if okay, what he's talking about here is Ephraim and Manasseh asked for their land ahead of time. And if you recall, there was a lot of discussion about that, okay, we'll give you the land, but you still need to go and help your other tribe families fight, regardless of whether you have your land or not. So you're still required to go in there as if you don't have your land and you haven't gotten your inheritance yet, and you're still required to go fight. And then when you're done fighting, you can go back to the land that you've already received. Because remember, they wanted their inheritance ahead of time. They wanted their lands before they got into the promised land. And so to the west of the Jordan, this is where they're settled. Yeah, it's kind of reminds me of the prodigal son, where he asks the prodigal asks for his inheritance now rather than later, and he takes it and he goes and squanders it. Now, they're doing the same thing. We want our inheritance now before anything else. We want a safe place for our children and our wives and our families and all of that. And we'll go fight, but we want our land now. And so that's basically how that transpired. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll post more.
I have to start driving, but I'm gonna keep listening.
Driving?
They're
Oh,
going
to
out
meet
to
my
dinner
son.
with her
Oh,
son.
driving. Okay, right. Okay, I wasn't sure
I'm
if
gonna
you said
keep listening.
driving or drying.
No, I'm gonna keep listening though.
Okay.
Have a nice dinner with your son.
Yeah. Enjoy that.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Thank
Same
Thanksgiving.
to
you.
you.
You also.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah. 15. Until the Lord gives your brothers rest, as he gives you, and they also possess the land which the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to your own land and possess that which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise. I already just read that, didn't I? I'm sorry. They answered Joshua, saying, all that you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses. And anyone who rebels against your command and does not obey your words, and all that you command him, shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. Solemn words that we are to put in our hearts. Be strong and courageous, because the Lord your God is with you. Just as people in the New Testament, in Old Testament also, when they encountered an angel, what's the first thing that the angel said to them?
Do not fear.
Fear not, do not be afraid.
Mhm.
Now, this angel is a messenger coming from being in the very presence of God, clothed in glory and power from on high. And they show up, and I'm sure us being just little regular peon human beings, all of a sudden we're face to face with this kind of incredibly intense godly power. Our first thing that we're going to do is shake our boots, and fall to our faces. And so the assurance that comes is, fear not, don't be afraid. It's okay. It's all cool. I'm not here to hurt you. In fact, I'm here to make your day a whole lot better. And it's the same thing here. Be courageous and strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you. And so
Because
that is a good place to stop for tonight, if that's okay, at the end of the first chapter of Joshua, because it is Thanksgiving week. And I don't know about you, but I intend to spend several days this week mastering the art of the slinky. I don't have any stairs, but I want to find out if it's possible to maybe get it to walk down a bookcase or my neighbor.
You have plenty of books you could arrange like steps.
I can do that. And see if the slinky will walk down. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the way to do it. And harmonica. Do any of you guys play harmonica? No, you
Do
mean
you?
no, or you mean no, not yet?
Do
No.
you?
No.
Do you?
I don't.
Do you?
I've
Yeah.
wanted to play harmonica for years. I've just never tried.
Try it.
So,
Try it. You might like it.
What does that remind you of? I wanted to do that for
Oh.
years. I've just never tried. Yeah.
Mm.
So, thoughts, questions, comments? Can anybody, hey, can you guys like anybody imitate the sound of a babbling brook? Could you do that? Yeah. No?
Gargle.
Gargle. Oh, it's good to see you guys. It's wonderful to see you guys. Made my night. Thank you very, very, very much.
It's
All
good to
right.
be here.
Yeah. And I apologize for the short night, but this has been a week.
No,
And I need to rest my
brain.
brain. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we take care of yourself. First
Oh,
things
right.
first.
So, somebody want to lead us out with a prayer?
I will.
Thank you.
Lord Jesus, thank you for the teaching tonight. Thank you that you put your word into our hearts,
Mm.
and may we follow you always. Please bless the people who aren't here tonight, and keep us healthy and safe and following you. And I also pray for Israel.
Mm.
Pray for peace in Jerusalem. In
Amen.
Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Mhm.
All right, I'm going to turn this off and then.
And I want to thank you, Rick, for having this, because it's
Mhm.
extremely new experience for me, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. And I thank you.
I'm glad.
for your
Thank you
wisdom.
for letting me. And thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'm very happy you're here. Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'm going to turn this off and then we can all, once the camera's up, we can all make cricket noises. So hang on a second.